The BMW F11 is a car that probably most of us have wanted to own at least once in our lifetime. I got lucky, so I got one. However, there's one vital piece missing to this car: the engine. Previously, we rebuilt a crashed BMW E91. Then we traded it for a broken BMW F11. And after removing and stripping the engine down, we found a spun rod bearing. In the last episode, we built this N53 engine from scratch. And now, it's finally time to find out if this motor is any good. Today is the day, or at least I hope, that we will put this big thing fully together, throw it back in the engine bay, and drive this car out of this garage under its own power. Now this is the entire engine, just empty with no accessories. Well, except for the high pressure fuel pump. But we do need to put a lot of things around it: the manifold, injectors, wiring loom, alternator, and stuff like that. So there's still a fair amount of work to do. So let's waste no more time and let's put the engine fully together. First thing to go on. Okay, I put a new gasket on. Then the coolant temperature sensor, like that. In this hole, there's a flange, what BMW community calls the Mickey Mouse flange, or as someone in my comment section has called it, Screaming Frog. So here I have bought an upgraded one, because when we removed it in the first video on this car, snapped off, because this comes in plastic from factory. I hope it's not gonna leak. I had to slightly hit it. Now a clean oil pressure regulator. Then the good old crankshaft position sensor. Then here on the back of the engine there is a hole in the cylinder head. That hole is for a plug like this. This is to the EGR. These ones are usually super tight, so I did buy an original gasket for the perfect fitment, like that, and I think it sits this way. Now I put on some brackets on the head, not important stuff, but now we'll put in the spark plugs. Then the injectors. So we know that we had two good injectors from before. So in Lithuania, I did buy 4 more injectors. We know that the 2 old ones are good, and these ones I will need to test first if they're leaking. So we'll only put in these 2 right now. These injectors has 2 gaskets. One here, the Teflon ring. This thing, it just slides off, and this is one-time use. And then there is a rubber seal on the top. So you just cut it off. Now on N43 engines, it doesn't matter. You don't really need to replace both of the seals because the N43 doesn't have much boost or anything at all, much pressure there. But on N54, these bigger engines, you do need to replace them because it is gonna start leaking if you don't. On N53, I'm not too sure, but at least on N54, you have to do this because the injectors are gonna leak if you don't. Now, it is not as simple as just buy new seals and slap them on. Well, the Teflon seal, yes, you just take it, brand new Teflon ring, and you just put it on and it clips in place. Also on the other one. But the bottom O-ring is not that simple because these seals, they are not completely rubber, they're hard rubber. You can barely stretch it. So for that you need a special toolkit. This I bought from AliExpress for like 30 bucks probably, 30 euros, something like that. This also has a little hammer to remove the injectors, but to install it you have this one. So you just loop it up, take the new seal and just put it over, and you are gonna slowly stretch it over all the way to the end, and then you're gonna put it on the injector. The best way to stretch it over is you take a flat surface like that and you just work your way around, pressing the seal up from each side because it is pretty hard. There you go. Now the seal is all the way at the tip. So then you take the injector, you put the tool on the tip of the injector, and then using your hand you're supposed to pull the seal over on the injector. But however, you can see that the seal is now slightly stretched, and that's why with the toolkit you also get these 3 small cylinders. They are 3 different sizes. One's the biggest one, and then one's medium, and then one small. And then it's to put it over the injector and to decompress the seal back to its original shape. You put on the biggest one, you move it around, you remove it, then you can already see that the seal is slightly compressed. Then you put the medium size on, slap it on, wiggle it around, and then you take the longest one, the smallest one. You have to be careful to not destroy the seal and make sure it actually stays in the groove. So now this is the smallest cylinder. When I get it on, I like to let it stay for a few minutes because you need to remove it after and then immediately put the injector inside the head. So when you put the injector back in the head, the seal slightly expands inside the head, creating the perfect seal. I let that injector sit until I do the second one. Then when I get done with the second one, I can put the injector in and do that for multiple times. So then when it's time to put the injector in, I like to use a part of this tool, slide it on. So then I remove the cylinder, then I put the injector in until it bottoms out. You have to look at the middle tab. The same step, carefully slide it in. Both of the injectors are in. Then I will take a bracket and a screw and look at the bracket the way it's bent, and I'll put it this way. So when the injectors get pushed down, it is going to push them down firmly in the middle, just like this. So then just tighten the bolt until it's flat. I will also write down the injector values. Then the rest of the 4 injectors I will reinstall after when engine is in the car. So now on with the rail. The water pump. That sits all the way down here, I think. Remove the old gaskets. Okay, so then the cables go around the head like that, like that. So this goes on the vacuum pump. And then where this goes, I got no idea. The starter. Now I need to somehow put back this thing. Here I have just the gaskets for the intake manifold. Now we need to somehow, one way or the other, connect everything. Now I think all the cables are connected and where they should be. I couldn't figure out where this vacuum line goes. I was looking everywhere, but then I found out that there's a line in the engine room. That's probably for the exhaust flaps or what. So now all the plugs are connected, all the vacuum lines. So now I can just torque down the intake manifold. The exhaust gaskets. Belt tensioner. These two connectors are for the thermostat and the AC. Now I think we have everything on. There is this little plate here. Then the flex plate. The gearbox is jacked up. We need to somehow put on the compressor. Probably not yet though. I mean the AC compressor. Still not yet. Okay, the AC is completely on. That was freaking annoying. I can confidently say that I was freaking annoying because there's 3 bolts holding it in place and there's a bunch of cables in the way. But now it's on. Okay, now what about the bell housing? What's up with that? One engine mount is in. So now the engine is somewhat in. I was struggling for a few hours trying to get the gearbox and the engine to line up. But now I finally managed to do that. And I did put in all of the housing bolts from the top and from everywhere. Now I'm just putting in the torque converter bolts. Annoying to film under the car, but I did tighten the exhaust bolts. And there's small screws to hold the gearbox lines in place. And that should be it for under the car, at least for now. So I'll put the car down because it's quite hard to work on it when it's so high in the air. Before we start connecting up all the coolant pipes and putting in the thermostat, I'll put on the belt. So the belt is on. Now let's start with the coolant pipes. Then we will put the fan in. Here is the original Mickey Mouse flange, and you can see it was cracked. So now we need to remove this, cut it off. Okay, good. There's a little screw holding the thermostat in. Now we can slap in the fan. Now all of it should be in. Okay, now the 1 million cables. Now let's add the oil. For the engine braking period, well, the first 1500 kilometers, I'll use this. This is just normal mineral oil. These engines usually take fully synthetic oil. The reason for that is because mineral oil is not as good to lubricate as the full synthetic oil. And that makes the piston rings bed in a lot easier. We need them to bed in properly in order for them to not burn oil. So now mineral oil for 1500 kilometers, then we will switch over to the fully synthetic one. This engine takes 6.5 liters of engine oil. So now let's check if the 4 used injectors that I bought are in okay condition. So this car also has a KN air filter. I'm not sure how I feel about them though. I will keep it and maybe we can put it back after the engine is broken in. But for now I'll put an original one. Okay. I'll go connect the battery now. Let's see if it cranks, and if it cranks... That is such a me problem. I have did this probably 100 times. Literally. I forgot to put the positive cable on. This will be good because it's gonna let us build some oil pressure as well while cranking the engine over without starting it. So now the diagnostic tool is showing 14,000 millibars, and that is 14 bars. But when I crank it, it goes up to 150 bars to 200 bars. And that's exactly where it should be. So now it has built all fuel pressure. And now we can really see if the injectors are leaking or not. You can see it's not leaking. Now we'll take the injectors off here, replace the gaskets down here, replace the Teflon rings, and I'll reinstall them in the engine. I will also write down the values, this here, upper ones, and I will also code them to the car after. Now I reinstalled the injectors, and I will also reinstall the coils. That was not climatic.
Nice, good job.
Nice. Okay, so it seemed that there was a code for low fuel pressure sensor. The one that sits right before the high pressure fuel pump on a pipe. So then I undid the manifold bolts and I managed to sneak my hand under and the connector was not fully in. So I pushed it in and now the code is gone. Now I will try to hold the pedal to activate the water pump. Yes! Now it's working. So it has bled enough, so I'm guessing we can start it and see how it runs with the sensor in place. Maybe it's gonna run better. So after plugging the fuel sensor in, the code went away, but it came back another code for the sensor. So I'm not sure what was wrong. I did have a whole high pressure fuel pump for a N54 engine, and I found out that the sensors are the same. So I just swapped out the sensor. To swap out the sensor, I undid the manifold bolts and I slightly lifted the manifold up. And then I managed to use a ratchet with a socket 24 on it and remove it without removing the manifold, because that's a pain. Now the engine is running correctly. However, there's still one more code, and that's for a lambda sensor.
Or pair another device.
I have driven the car at this point for a bit. I have driven it for 150 kilometers and the engine is running very good. No problems, nothing. We do have an engine light, so we need to take care of that and some other problems. We have three problems. Engine light, that is because of the lambda. I tried disconnecting it and I know that it's the lambda on bank 1. Now, the way these engines run, they run in 3 different modes: stratified, homogeneous, and one mode in the middle of these. It does not run in stratified. Stratified is a mode these engines run in when it's running super lean, and then this engine is very economical. It does not do that now because of the lambda fault. We also get NOx sensor faults. Firstly, we do need to replace the lambda and reset the adaptions, and I will take it for a test drive and we will see if the car is running in stratified and if the NOx sensor is good. Because the NOx sensor can throw a fault code because the lambda is broken. I did got another NOx sensor used since I was in Lithuania. I'm not going to replace it before we know that this one is bad. Another problem, the engine vibrates. When the engine is running on idle in park, perfect. But when you put it in gear, there's more tension on the engine, and then you can feel a constant vibration through all the chassis of the car. When you're driving, you give gas, and on certain RPMs, the whole chassis vibrates. And it really feels like engine mounts. So we need to replace both front engine mounts and also the gearbox mounts. And then another thing, when I looked under the car, the prop shaft bows looked original. And also when you're driving fast, like 80 maybe, you can slightly feel a vibration at a certain speed when you let the gas off. And that really feels like the prop shaft bearing. So we'll need to replace the prop shaft bearing as well as the prop shaft bows. And this car has one in the front and one in the back. So we need to replace these things. And after that, the car should be good. By the way, I did got this car inspected, and it did pass. The problems it had was windscreen washers not working and the emissions, because the engine wasn't working properly. And even though it's not working properly now, it did pass the emissions, and the windscreen washer, it worked. Maybe it was just frozen, I don't know. So first thing, we need to remove the exhaust. Holy shit. Okay. What the freak? How heavy is the exhaust? Wait. Oh my. I've never had to remove so freaking heavy exhaust. Now we need to remove this cross member here that is supporting the gearbox and hold this entire shield that was all the way back. Now I need to put the engine in neutral, or not the engine, the gearbox. Yes. Now I will mark the position of the middle bearing as well. Okay. Now I'm removing the cross member for the gearbox because we need to remove the gearbox mount. Wait. So now looking from here, we can see that the entire cross member is here held on with beautiful focus. Is held on by 4 bolts. Oi. Now I will go and get some parts. I would like to introduce a new partner of the channel. Trado reached out to me and offered me a partnership. They are a part supplier company which I have been using for the past 3 years probably, and I'm super happy with the quality of the parts, with the prices, everything. So I'm super excited to work with them. This time we have these parts. So as we can see, this is the gearbox mount and the other one as well. Then the middle bearing. Then here is the guibos. They are actually the same for the front and the back, so these two are exactly the same part. Here I have one of the engine mounts and the other engine mount. They are not the same part, so I will need to check which one is for which side. Usually when I order parts, I'm not too obsessed with the brand of the parts. As long as they are premium quality, I'm good to go. So when I order parts, I make sure I choose premium and I choose my own brand. So make sure to check out Eurodel if you're in Norway, or Trado if you're in Europe or the rest of the world, because they do offer worldwide shipping if you need any parts for your car or your project. And make sure to use this discount code to get your quality parts cheaper. I have used this company for the past 2 or 3 years and I'm super happy with the customer service and overall experience. So here are the gearbox mounts. They do seem exactly the same. So then it goes on like that. So that's the gearbox mounts in place. Now we need to replace the middle bearing, this thing. The way it works here is that it's pressed on this way. Here I made sure to mark the position. So now we need to find something, put against this lip and hammer it off. So I hammered for a long time. I used this and I put it on the edge here because the bearing sits like that. Try to hammer exactly on this edge. One side I span it over to the other side, and then eventually, after a long time of hammering, it did give up. Yes! The bearing is sitting like that with the collar towards this rubber. So now pull it off. But we can put the bearing on. Now we need to put this bearing all the way to the edge of the lip. And to do that, I have this cup here, and it's exactly the size so that it fits exactly on the inner diameter of the bearing. Just like that. So you can see it exactly the same size as the inner race. That way when we push it on or hammer it on, it's not going to damage the bearing itself. The cup, gonna put another one on top. Yep, now it's flush. You can hear how easy that spins and how quiet it is. Now we need to line up exactly your marks. You can play around a bit so you are sure that the splines align perfectly how they are. Yep, I am confident that this is the exact spline. Now let's remove the old flex disc. So that has some pretty bad cracks in it. Now on the part there are arrows, one that goes this way, one that goes the opposite way, one that goes this way, and then the opposite way, and just like that. The new part from Trado, you can see when you push it, no cracks, nothing. And it's exactly the same one. It is the same which way you put it, this way or this. If the arrows, for example, is shown that way, then that hole is supposed to mount onto the prop shaft this way, or well, then the gearbox this way. So you can't put the Quibo on like that if the arrow on this one is shown this way. So it must be like this. Now the Quibo to the prop shaft is torqued to 55 firstly, and then 90 degrees. Prop shaft is done now. One thing you have to remember when you're putting the prop shaft back is that the prop shaft middle bearing, the arms on it are not center. So by mistake you can put it accidentally upside down. And then the prop shaft is going to be at an angle, and that's going to cause vibrations. So if you look at the prop shaft like this side, the bigger side, so the arms are lower, is supposed to look towards the top of the car. On the original one, it even says here, top. It does not do that on the new one, so I need to remember to put this side up. Abba. Now, as we still have places here, I want to torque down the gearbox side of the Quibo, and then we'll put the gearbox mount on and the cross member to push the gearbox up again. And the torque for the back Quibo is 20 Newton meters and 90 degrees. Now we need to somehow this thing. Now we need to be Hulk and push this gearbox up using my feet. Right now I'm also going to tighten the middle bearing. Sometimes on some cars the middle bearing must be under tension, so it must be pressed this way or this way. I'm not sure about this car, that's why before taking it I used a Sharpie on the chassis and I marked from each side which direction the bearing must be. As I'm still back here, I will put on the heat shield. It's so fun working on a car when there's no rust on it. You guys from the no rust places, you don't understand how lucky you are. Now we need to start undoing the engine mounts, and then we need to lift the engine up with the engine lift, enough to remove the engine mounts and replace them. Okay, it's not the easiest angle to film, but now we need to undo the bolts for the engine mount. I'm actually also going to remove the screws from the under. Then I will unplug vacuum line, because these engine mounts are vacuum controlled, so they get harder when they need to and stuff like that. There is one more bolt, seems like. Yes, it's out. Here we have the new part. Yep, exactly the same part. Yeah, this ain't working. I want to do this engine mount bracket because I can't lift the engine anymore. That's how easy it was. Exactly the same part. It's time to be Hulk again. I can't believe how heavy this is. Oh, you some.
Another package from Trado. Lambda. So this is the post-cat Lambda from original manufacturer, Bosch. I have had bad experience with aftermarket Lambdas, so from now on I'm only going original Bosch. Don't be a cheapskate, guys, and just buy the original one, because sooner or later you're gonna learn your mistake. I need to see if I can access it. Pretty tight in here. Did it really just loosen that easy? Oh, I was in the gym. My arms are killing me. Yes. So I deleted the codes. Right now, no codes. But previously there was some codes for the knocks. So I'll reset the adaptions and go for a good drive for a long time. If any knocks codes come back, then we need to see and need to check also if the car is running in stratified. We're back. I test drove the car for a few, maybe 100 kilometers. Still not running perfectly. So here is the second-hand knocks that I got. And I checked the codes. 3 codes for the NOx sensor came back. That was the only codes that came back. Yes! I hope it's not coming in with the thread. Yes! No thread though. You know what? There is thread, however. There's no thread on the NOx sensor itself, but the thread in the socket looks pretty decent, to be honest. Perfect. So the threads were fine. I got pretty damn lucky with that one. Pretty damn lucky. Okay, the battery died, but I replaced the Knox. There it is. I hope that the used one is good. Now I'll put the car down and test it. One thing that I did not get in time, the spark plugs. So we had installed the old ones, but now we finally got the correct ones. Remove the cover. The same part. So now with this engine after the rebuild, I have driven 605 kilometers and the engine is performing flawlessly. We are still driving on mineral oil, so we filled it to the max when we rebuilt the engine and it's still on max, so it hasn't burned any oil yet. The machine guy said it's gonna burn oil in the beginning a bit until the rings wear in and make the perfect seal, but I mean, so far it's not burning any. I'm super impressed with the F11, how comfortably it drives. It's like super smooth, super soft, and when you put it up into the Sport Plus mode, it becomes so much stiffer and rougher to handle and way more responsive as well. I'm not driving the engine hard. When I started driving right after the rebuild, it was easy revs, no high revs. Now when we are at 500 kilometers, 600 kilometers, you need to increase the revs, but don't hold them on for too long. If you don't push the engine hard sometimes, you can risk the rings not wearing in at the top of the cylinders or the bottom. So that is gonna be it for this video. I need to post the video, so I just need to finish it now. I'm just gonna finish driving in this car, then I'm gonna swap the oil, and I guess it's done. Driving perfectly. It's a very nice car. If you guys would like to support this channel, make sure to check out my Patreon. It is in the description. Then you will have early access to my videos. This car is done now, so no more of this car. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one.